All right. If you're watching this right now, it's because I'm bad with my new software and trying to figure out how to do this. But the actual live stream with questions will start shortly. I like my new software, but there's not an obvious way to me to how to do some of this stuff. I'm also afraid that I'm going to go live accidentally publicly so everybody can join it. Sometimes they find the actual link to it. That's not my favorite thing in the world. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's not the best thing either. So wait just a little bit and things should be okay. I found my link. Okay, hopefully this will work. Okay. Need to figure this out for next week. Okay, publishing it so people should be able to join now. In theory. We'll see what happens. Okay. Well, anyway, now that we're how many minutes into this? 2 minutes into it, and there's no actual real meaningful content. So sorry once again. All right, people starting to join in. Jace, hi, hello, thank you for joining in. Um, yeah, if you have any questions, you're first up, so you can have first dibs on asking amazing questions to me. Okay, Gamerman X9000, I have a lot of questions for you today, and one answer you might have been looking for. Answers are good. Rich Reviews, how are you? I'm doing good. Doing good. Worked out this morning. Got a video scheduled to go live in 52 minutes. Just did a live stream that seemed to go successful. So things are good for me. World may be crazy. That drink did not clear my throat. That didn't work. But life is good for me. Bryce, how are you doing today? I'm good. Nothing to complain about, for me at least. Rich Reviews. Well, I got my $1,200 check from the government. I wonder. I don't know if I've gotten mine yet. I don't do that direct deposit, so I have to check my mail, figure out what we're ended up with. Since there's 2 adults, 3 kids, so that could be a nice little check that we'll just put in our bank and not do anything with. Keep it as a nice safety blanket. David Pedersen, hey, hello. Ryan Green, hello. Sean, hello. Ryan. Ryan Green, what films have you watched this week? This week, do I have my phone to? Let me see if I've got records of what I've watched. Oh, didn't mean to do that. Let's see if I've got records of what I watched this week. I know I watched a bunch of Die Hard movies. Okay, according to my records, I watched Snowpiercer, The Naked Gun, Live Free or Die Hard, The Good Day to Die Hard, Die Hard with a Vengeance, all 3 Honey I Shrunk the Kids movies, Bloodsport, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and Onward about 10 times. There we go. Quinn, should Ultron come back as a bigger and better threat? I'd have a hard time understanding how they could do that, how they could find a way for that to happen. I was in my prediction videos. I predicted they might use Ultron as a way to battle Thanos as his with a correct format to have a threat that he existed to save humanity from. They didn't do that. So I'd have a I don't know how they would do it in a way that would make sense. Like, oh, he was actually on this flash drive over here and now he's come back. That just sounds shady that there'd be something like that. So I'd have a hard time imagining the scenario where something like that could happen. Rich Reviews, will you be watching the ESPN 10-part documentary series The Last Dance about the last championship run of the Chicago Bulls? I doubt it. I don't have ESPN. I don't have cable, so right off the bat, they would make that difficult. I have nothing against it. If my wife was interested in that, then we'd be for it. I'd be fine watching it. It's just not something that immediately jumps out to me as something that I would be to rush out to watch. I don't follow sports enough to be that invested. I mean, of course, the Chicago Bulls, and that's all interesting stuff. So, but it's not one that specifically I would rush out towards. Rich Reviews, deeply admire you. Hope you admire me. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, and I do my best to respect everybody and see their benefit and everything like that. So, of course I do. So you're obviously very dedicated, friendly, and we've been talking movies for a while. Jace, what is your least favorite Office cold open? Probably the one where Kevin kills a turtle and tries to save it. I just don't think it's kind of in poor taste. Like the nature of humor is you're trying to find the line and just go right up to it. And so it's always supposed to be transgressive, and there's thin line, but there's like two different lines. There's the line of funny, and then there's the line of too far. And especially with a show like The Office that dwells on uncomfortable humor, you're always going right up to the line of at what point in time does it stop being funny and just be in bad taste. And so I don't begrudge them for that. I don't necessarily hold it against them, but that's one that didn't work for me. Bryce, are there any movies other than Back to the Future that you think lend themselves to being rebooted for the modern generation? I mean, there's a lot of things I'd be fine with a reboot for in different ways and different ways. That's the one that I think has, my opinion, is the most interesting, because most people just by default say, no, of course you can do it. It's a perfect movie. Why would you remake this? And they're just so tied to their nostalgia where the movie's perfect. And I think they're missing out on the obvious nature by which you could remake it. And it doesn't take away from the original one. You're not trying to be better than the original one. The question is there something interesting and new to say now that there wasn't to be said earlier? And there is. Even like the concept of meeting your parents in high school is always interesting. That's always an interesting concept, but it's a different interesting concept at different points in time. So I don't have one that immediately comes to mind. But Jackson, remember me? I do remember you. Christian Arnold, have you seen Napoleon Dynamite? Yeah, many, many, many times. I saw it back when it first came out in the theater, and it was, just kind of a smaller run and a bit of an indie film before it kind of took off as this cult classic that everybody ended up seeing. But yeah, I've always thought it was really funny. Just such memorable characters, such a distinct sense of humor that even the director himself could never really replicate. It's you get a little bit of it in Nacho Libre, and they tried to do like a animated series, but nothing's ever captured what they did with the original film. And all these little things just paid off, whether a dance number or bizarre plot lines about the kid running for class president. So just real neat film that just worked. Gimran X, could you rank the Mummy movies? Yeah, so I wouldn't do all the Mummy movies. I would want to do just the Brendan Fraser ones. While there's a lot of things that fall into the category of Mummy, comparing this 1930s film to the Brendan Fraser and then the Tom Cruise, it just seems weird to me. So I would just do the Brendan Fraser ones. I've been thinking about it a good, but even more recently, my wife and I watched like the first, I ironically put it on at like 2 a.m, be like, let's watch this. And then I fell asleep immediately, and my wife just kept watching it, not realizing I had fallen asleep, and was joking when I did it. So it's been on my mind to actually watch them and rank them. And now that I'm in quarantine, I'm trying to kind of do some of those. So I did like Phantasm last week. I'm doing Honey, I Shrunk the Kids tomorrow. they're rankings that don't make it. They're not going to be hit videos, but they let me put some stuff out there that people might be interested in. Rich reviews. Apparently, the song of the moment during quarantine is "Cruel Summer" by Bananarama. Makes a lot of sense. Bryce, what are some of your favorite zombie movies? Both Dawn of the Dead's, whether the original one, George Romero, or Zack Snyder. Very cool. Great concept, executed two very different ways that I think really work. Shaun of the Dead, of course. Of course, George Romero's original trilogy and Land of the Dead. So I think the first four that he did are all kind of classics of the genre and did something different with it. Of those, I didn't even expand about it. Dawn of the Dead is my favorite of that bunch. I guess I Am Legend could be considered, so I enjoyed that one. Don't rewatch it much, but because certain things that happen in it, but enjoy it. Jackson, I love the new format of the questions being on your screen. That's dope. Yes, I got new software. Griffin, my partner in crime with the podcast, he seems to he just knows. I don't know how to add that, but he knows some software stuff a little bit better than me. So he's keeps recommending, you should check this out. And I check it out. Well, this is cool. And that's what I start using. So he recommended using this new software, Ecamm Live. And so then it has helped me out a good bit. Because I can put the questions on the screen and it's super duper simple. There's nothing tricky about it or anything. I literally just click a button and they're up there. It gets tricky. Well, where it's tricky is on the main one, where I'm trying to do where there's super chats, and so then I have to find them. I wish that there was a tab to have super chats and something like that. But besides that, it makes everything easier, and I can just put graphics up on the screen, put words up on the screen, put a frame up. So a bunch of things much easier to use than what I had been using before, which is OBS. That is free. This one costs money, so the one that costs money is better, which I guess makes sense. Bryce, did you ever see The Strain on FX? No, I have not seen a single episode of The Strain. I know what it is. I have not seen it. Jessica Geeman, hello, Mr. Chandler. How's it going? I am doing good and happy to talk movies with you guys and girls. Gamerman X, have you seen Hayden Christensen in anything out of sight of Star Wars? Yeah, I've seen him in several things. He was in a movie called, was it Jumper, directed by Doug Liman? Kind of like a superhero type story. I don't know if it's based off a comic book or anything like that, but about these people that can have the power basically to teleport. And then I think it's called Takers, that came out about 10 years ago. That's like a heist movie about people that take things. And yeah, so I've seen a few things. I haven't seen him anything that made me see his talent. I think it's The Glass House, The Glass Castle, something like that, that he did before Attack of the Clones, that apparently was really good in. Everything I've heard, but I've never seen it to be able to confirm or deny that. Josh Johnston, hey, could you watch The Final Girls? The Taiwan Farminga stars in it, and it's not very well known. If you haven't seen it, you should definitely check it out. I'd love to know your opinion on it. I think I've heard of it. I definitely haven't seen it, so I can look into it. I can't make any promise. Literally probably 20 requests to review a movie, and it's tough to do that. There's just so many different things that people want me to watch, want me to rank, and it's just tough because it's both. I'm trying to balance what do I want to do, what's just interesting and different, and then trying to listen to people and provide the thing you're asking for. But when there's so many people asking daily, it makes it tough, unfortunately. That I wish I could get everybody what they want. I bought a 3-disc Stallone set that has Demolition Man, Over the Top, and Tango and Cash. How would you rank those 3 movies? Easily in top place is Demolition Man. It's just a solid action movie that's got a little sci-fi, wicked sense of humor that's just works. Sandra Bullock is in it, Wesley Snipes, and a gigantic cast of other people filling out all the other roles. And so just a really good Sylvester Stallone action comedy. And then which about Tango and Cash and Over the Top? That's a little bit tricky because they're Over the Top is so over the top in its self seriousness that it I don't know, it almost there's a certain charm to the nature of that one. And Tango and Cash, actually, just yesterday, I watched a video on Joe Blow about the making of it. They actually might have just posted the video for the first time, but so I watched the making, kind of the behind the scenes, like what was all the disaster stuff that happened. It was really interesting. I've never thought that it was nearly as good as it should be. A buddy cop movie with Kurt Russell and Stallone, with Terry Hatcher thrown in the mix, should be a lot better than that movie is. And so if I had to rank them, Demolition Man on top. If I'm going to an island, do I take Over the Top or do I take Tango and Cash? I'd probably take Tango and Cash. I think so. Because Over the Top is one that's fun to watch with other people. If it's which one would be more interesting to show to a group of people, it's Over the Top because it's so goofy that it's kind of fun to watch and that sort of thing. Whereas Tango and Cash, it's like, oh, it's a mediocre buddy cop film. David Patterson, I was finally able to watch Parasite on Hulu. I wasn't a huge fan of the narration at the end, but it was a fantastic 97%. Yeah, in general, I didn't like the end of that movie. I think it just escalated too much and it confused the message and was like, wait, what just happened? But other than that, I think very well done. Rich reviews. Well, it looks like YouTube is finally forcing me to upload with the new version instead of the upload classic. Yeah, that's what I've heard, is that they're going to force everyone over very soon. And so on my second channels, I can't use the classic anymore. On my main channel, I still have classic for at least right now. But I do not like the new uploader. I don't like being told what order I need to do things and any of that stuff. What I would recommend for Arrow is only watching seasons 1, 2, 5, season premiere of 6, the first 7 episodes of season 7, and all of season 8 episodes before Crisis. Oh, I don't know about watching season 8 episodes. I don't know about that. I mean, I think even recommending the show like that, I don't think it makes any sense. Because those 8 episodes of season 8, or the episodes of season 8, don't make any sense if you don't see the end of season 7. And if you watch them the way you're doing, it just seems like, why are we in a sci-fi show now? And that's the tough thing. There's not, like, if you cut things out, then because it's so serialized, it doesn't make any sense. And I just don't think there's a way to fix it by chopping things out, because they just so ran themselves into a corner that it's just, and you're watching this kind of retrospective of the past ones where it's a sci-fi show and built in it, because season 8 was a build up to Crisis. So even watching those ones without Crisis, it doesn't feel like a finale. So there's just no good way to do it, unfortunately. Bryce, new video ideas: top 10 movie remakes, reboots. Rank them based on how good the movie is itself and how well it translates rebooted. Definitely a possibility. Could be fun. How many more seasons do you think The Flash will have? 8 like Arrow or 10 like Smallville? I don't know. I mean, it's tough to say because I don't know what plot lines they're trying to do or what they're building towards. Doesn't seem like Grant is trying as hard to have a career outside of the Flash, whereas Stephen Amell, I don't think that Grant is as old now as Stephen was when he started on Arrow. There's like a 10-year age difference, and so I think Grant's like 28, 29, and Stephen Amell was like 30, 31 when he started on Arrow. Or Stephen Amell, he's about 6 months older than me. He was born in 1981, I believe May of 81. And so he was like 31 when he was cast for Arrow. Grant, I'm almost positive, is not 31 yet. And so I think Stephen Amell was already divorced, got married a second time a season or 2 into Arrow, had a kid, and then had all these other things he was trying to do. And so I don't think he liked the strain of 22 episodes plus crossovers and shooting in Vancouver while his family's in LA, I believe. And so I think he was a big part of kind of wanting to, like, let's close this out. I'm forever grateful to the show. I will always be appreciative. I don't want to be Tom Welling and do this for 10 years. And even Tom Welling wasn't as old as is significantly younger than Stephen Amell was when he started. So I think that's a little bit of what's going on. So I would guess you probably get a little bit more Flash, but it's tough to say because they keep launching new shows and they have all sorts of thoughts on how they do things. But I'm basing it more on the actors themselves, and I think Grant could go longer. I think he's a phase of life where he could go longer with that sort of thing, and it would work. Gameran X, you should watch Legends of Tomorrow season 1. I already have. I watched it when it first aired. But season 2 and 3 are fun. The funny show in Arrowverse, it's way better than Supergirl and improves characters from other shows. Yeah, I'm just too burned out on Arrowverse to want to put in the homework. Like I didn't not like season 2 of Legends. I just didn't have the energy to kind of keep going. It wasn't something I was like drawn to, like to just binge it and keep going. So that's kind of what happened. And I've tried a couple times to pick it back up, but you know, it just hasn't worked out yet. So I just don't see myself adding new Arrowverse at this point in time because there's just no benefit to me because I don't enjoy them enough. And I've already been soured, and the more I kind of watch, the more I imagine I'll be soured to some of it. David Patterson, why would anyone rewatch A Good Day to Die Hard? Well, if you're me, it's because you make money watching movies, and so I have to watch a lot of things to have fresh takes on them. So I watched A Good Day to Die Hard 3 days ago, and it was as bad as I remembered. Majestic Demon, I think I've gone crazy. I watched The Matrix for the first time ever last night. I don't know how I never watched this wonderful movie. You've told me a bunch of movies that you haven't watched, and you mentioned like, hey, should I even watch these? Like, and I'm like, yes, those are like the fundamentals. So I think you need to trust me on some of these movies that you need to watch because you're missing out on a bunch of the classics. Bryce Bailey, do you have any recommendations on who would play Matt Murdock Daredevil if they rebooted him in the MCU movies? No, not off the top of my head. All of those I have to spend some time really thinking about it. I don't have a default go-to person normally. What I always say is what I do not like is when people just default to looking at this list of like 10, 20 people. And they're all the same A-listers, and they go, well. So I was doing during the podcast, people were like, would Tom Holland be a good Robin? If he wasn't Spider-Man, if he'd been cast as Robin 5 years ago instead of Spider-Man, sure. But the idea that all of our comic book characters are all from the same group of people, and it's just because most people, those are the actors that they know. They don't know kind of these deeper cuts, and that's who I normally want. Charlie Cox, one of the reasons he was great is that I'd never seen him in anything before, or I had and I didn't realize it. And so all I saw was Matt Murdock. That was it. He could just be the character with no comparison, no baggage, no weight. So that's what I like when they can do that. But so I don't have anyone that's right off the top of my head. Eric King, what's up, Sean? I work at a movie theater in Oklahoma, so I get my hands on official movie posters all the time. I would love to send you one, but I want you to choose which one. Knives Out, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, or Jojo Rabbit. Tell me which one you'd rather have, and I'll send it your way. I love your content. Okay, thank you. I greatly appreciate the kind words. I also greatly appreciate you wanting to send me a poster. I love to have movie posters, and I actually need to get a few more big frames. I got a couple I haven't framed yet. I probably wouldn't want Jojo Rabbit. That's not the one I would go towards. I think I would go Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think Knives Out had a cool. Either one of those would be pretty great. Any of the three would be great. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood at a cool post. The posters for it were really cool. So I think that's the one that I would go with. Thank you so much. Very much greatly appreciated. David Patterson, I watched Marriage Story and I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it since my parents had a very rough divorce. Yeah, when it kind of first came out in December, there was a bunch of people. I got into a little bit of a rough deal with some people over it. because everyone was like, you should watch this, you should watch it. I was like, I don't know that I want to. I lived through a couple of divorces. My parents got divorced, then my dad divorced the person he married, and those aren't fond memories for me. And a very realistic, well acted drama about it is not something I'm rushing out to see. And so there were people like, it's your job, and how dare you? And there's one person, I had to start blocking people because it got nasty. There was someone like, what, you reviewed stuff that dealt with addiction and alcohol, but you won't talk about this one about divorce? I don't get it. I was like, that's gross. Like, that you're using my own past struggles against me as leverage to try and force me to watch something I'm not comfortable, like, gross. So I blocked some people, and then it came back up like 3 weeks later. I was like, all right. And I said, I'll watch it before the end of the year. So a few weeks later, right before the end of the year, I did watch it. And I was like, yeah, very, very well made movie that is a lot funnier than you'd expect. And for how brutal it is, watching the bad choices and the miscommunications and the escalation, as brutal as it is, it's still a movie that you can enjoy. But, and then I posted that on Twitter, that I watched it and enjoyed it. And I literally had the people that were like harassing me came back and like, oh, I thought you said you were going to watch it. I thought you said you hate it. I was like, what is wrong with you people? Why are you doing this? I'm trying to talk to you like I'm a human, like I'm like a normal person, that I have feelings, emotions. There's things in my life that I don't want to relive the experience of my parents' divorce, even though it was 25 plus years ago. Really unpleasant memories from my childhood. And so, yeah, it was people. They can be frustrating, but I thought it worked really well. Damon, hey Sean, what's your dream roster for a new Avengers team post Endgame? Well, I don't know that I wouldn't even think about it. The one that would be the dream roster wouldn't necessarily be it wouldn't just be the Avengers, because I'd have to think through too many people. I think the dream next, like, how do you top Endgame, is our current batch of Avengers teaming up against something massive and huge with the X-Men and Fantastic Four. I think that's where you can escalate things and make it better. Or if I had to like pick something, then you have the Avengers. We still got Thor in there. We got Hulk. And then you have like Mr. Fantastic leading them, Wolverine's on the team, Spider-Man. And so it's something like that that's a little bit of a mix of them. Something like that. Matthew K., I was wondering if you could rank the Harold and Kumar trilogy, or at least review the first. They're some of my favorite comedies. Yeah, so I'm hoping to kind of slowly make my way through some smaller franchises that are kind of random like that I just haven't gotten to. So I've never seen any of those movies, actually. So on the one hand, I do need to watch them. On the other hand, it might not be the first one that I would default to heading towards when I start kind of ranking some of these, or as I'm ranking some of these kind of random franchises. Bryce Bailey, favorite Clint Eastwood directed movie? Mine is probably Richard Jewell or Gran Torino. I'd have to put a little bit of thought into it. The nature of the movies that he makes, they're not ones that I tend to rewatch, but I really enjoy them. So, and I've skipped the ones that didn't get good reviews or people said were bad. So the ones I've watched, I've been very positive on most all of them. So, Unforgiven was a big one for me to kind of like, I was big into his Westerns during my teenage years. And so that came out, I was like 12. So that was kind of a big one for me at the time. Yeah, I don't necessarily have a specific answer. They're all kind of in the same little category for me. Majestic Demon, Netflix is currently worth more than Disney. Thoughts? There's a number of different things to. On my overall thought is like, that's interesting. It doesn't mean anything to me. That's like my default. My actual feelings on the matter is, okay, cool. So basically what happened is that the world shut down. So Disneyland, Disney World shut down. So there's no, and their movies can't come out. So their stock plummets, but everyone's at home. So they're streaming. So Netflix stock shoots straight up. So Netflix passes Disney. That's what happened. So it's just a blip on the. That's really what it is, a blip. But at the same time, people are acting like they're massively surprised by this. But Netflix has just been a dominant force for a while. Like they are the bar by which streaming services are measured. So the fact that people are surprised that they're a major player, well, that should not surprise people all that much at all. The other thing you have to consider on this is that Netflix has an enormous amount of debt. Like they're severely in debt to be able to crank out as much new content. It's all debt based. So I don't even know what that means because they're on a house of cards. At some point in time, this thing could just come crumbling down. So I'm not sure what it means that Netflix is worth more than Disney. That's a lot of Wall Street mumbo jumbo. like if nearly 100-year-old Disney is suddenly worth less than Netflix because the quarantine right now, that probably isn't a legitimate thing. It's just kind of the way the stock market works and stuff like that. Disney's assets, their catalog of things that they own, seems like it's certainly worth more than Netflix, despite what stock prices might say. Quinn, do you have a favorite Star Wars actor? I guess Harrison Ford. I think there's a lot of people in Star Wars that aren't. They're iconic, but they're not necessarily great actors necessarily, or they didn't give their best work there. Where Harrison Ford gave him his star-making performances in Star Wars. If not for Han Solo, we wouldn't have movie star Harrison Ford because he was like even thinking about retiring and was going to be a carpenter, work with wood, and then Han Solo happened, and then we got the career of Harrison Ford. David Patterson, I feel like I'm the only person on the planet who thinks John Wick Chapter 2 is the best in the trilogy. I don't think that's that controversial of a pick. I don't think any of them are the one that everyone says is the one. The first one is the freshest, but then the second one, people really enjoyed it because it expanded the mythology. Third one went even bigger with everything, but a lot of people didn't like the way that it ended and didn't feel like it resolved certain things. So I don't think that there's anything controversial about that. So I don't know who you're talking to that it's making you feel like you're the only one that feels that way, but I wouldn't be surprised that that's fairly common. Rich reviews. So if and when theaters open, at what capacity will they be seating? I would guess that it's 50%. I would when they open, I wouldn't be surprised if there was some mandate that they can only be 50% full. You can't sit next to someone that didn't come in your group, something like that. Or you have to have 2 seats between you or something. I would assume there's going to be something like that. That is what I am anticipating. Landon Pearson, and right before the theaters closed, I closed A Quiet Place 2. First reviews were great, and some people said it was better than the original. So that's what Griffin, my podcast partner, said. He knows a lot of people that watched it because he's in LA, and there was a lot of really positive buzz for it. And I was supposed to see it with Griffin at the press screening in Austin, and then it was canceled. Bryce, what are some of your favorite disaster movies? Independence Day, all that 90s stuff. I mean, Armageddon, Twister, that's the stuff that I was, formative, always have a special place in my heart. Rich reviews. Must be nice to have a governor that is looking for a way to loosen restrictions. Yes, that's Texas is nice that way. That I don't know if that I don't want to chime in too much on that stuff because I feel like I'm probably out of my league a little bit. That's not, people don't subscribe for my political musing, so I don't want to go too far down that path. But I think that you have to think holistically about all of this. That you of course have to make calculations. You don't want to be crass about it. There's a lot of people saying really stupid stuff out there, and I think so. What is it? One of these guys said, like, "Hey, they should reopen the schools. Probably only 1 or 2% of kids would die." Like, okay, don't say stupid things like that. Come on, like, what are you doing? But at the same time, I like, there's a side to it that you can't shut everything down forever. That has problems. So of course we need to be thinking about how to move things forward. Jace, would you do a how to fix Spectre with Griffin? That's not on my radar. I need to rewatch it to see what my problems with it would be. I don't know if him and I would be on the same page. He's more a fan of the series. He's probably more a lot bigger fan of that movie, but I've only watched it once, so I don't remember too much about it. And I wouldn't want to fix it until I see where they're going, because they're continuing it with the new one. So you're doing a fix without knowing where they're going. I don't think works very well. So it's possible, but it wouldn't be for a long time. I know you're not big on The Shining, but have you heard that a spin-off series called Overlook is in development? Have any thoughts? I mean, I've heard about it, and J.J. Abrams is involved with it, which means probably just means it's Bad Robot. It's for HBO Max. Without knowing more, not really. Just the simple idea of like, let's go back to the 1920s and watch the crazy adventures at the Overlook Hotel. That doesn't sound interesting to me. So, just the Overlook Hotel itself isn't the thing that's interesting about that world to me. It's The Shining itself. That's somewhat why the movie The Shining doesn't connect with me as much, because the movie The Shining is more about the Overlook, and I'm more interested in The Shining, which is why I like Dr. Sleep more. So I would just have to know a lot more to have any actual expanded thoughts. Like by default, I wouldn't assume I would watch a show like that. I would have to know more. Like I don't hear that and go, oh, I'm going to check that out. David Patterson, I've watched at least one movie every day for 36 days. Very cool. Sidar, have you seen Crazy Stupid Love? Saw it last week. Really surprised. Yeah, I've seen it several times. Really, really enjoy it as a rom-com that has a little bit more heart to it, a little bit more heartbreak to it. A fantastic ensemble cast, some very memorable moments, elements, and some great chemistry between everyone involved. Josh, whoops, in my message earlier, I said Taiwan Farmiga. Yes, you did. I was very a little bit confused. Richard, the film Napoleon, they filmed Napoleon Dynamite where my aunt lives. I've actually heard from a few people that they live around where it's filmed. Landon, will you watch the Netflix Sergio movie with Ana de Armas? Probably not. Doesn't immediately interest me. Doesn't seem like my type of movie. It's not off the table. Just doesn't. No reason that I would rush out to watch it. Bryce Bailey, what movie villain did you personally agree with the most? What movie villain did I personally agree with the most? I don't know. As soon as I start agreeing with the movie villains, you're kind of in a dangerous spot there. I mean, the only one that's kind of coming to mind is that you think like, was it Killmonger in Black Panther, raises a compelling argument. His objective, what he's trying to do, is evil, but the thought driving his action is not. Where he says, you've been a powerful nation, and there are oppressed people in the world, and you didn't leverage the power and the wealth that you have to help oppressed people. I think that there's a compelling thought there. There's things to that where you go, that is something that is a fault with this country, that they allowed people to suffer while they had the means. While they lived in security, they allowed others to suffer. That is compelling. Where he goes with that, less compelling. David Patterson, I rewatched Arrival last night. I'd give it 100%. Very cool. Very cool. Jackson, The Office has too much stuff with dead animals. The sprinklers, the turtles, the birds, the joke about Kevin's dead dog, shooting horses in the head. That's my most frustrating part of the show. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's uncomfortable about some of that. German Gamer Max. Kevin Feige was to restore the Marvel Netflix verse. I would want him to bring back Daredevil for 7 more seasons. And also, Sean, my next question starts with if Kevin Feige was. Yeah, so I wouldn't lock in saying I want 7 more seasons of Daredevil. I think you get yourself in dangerous territory as soon as you say, let's just keep going. I think it's how much story do you have? And the frustrating thing with where Daredevil ended is that in no way did it feel like they'd run out of story. With Punisher as well, it didn't feel like they ran out of story. Almost none of the shows had a proper finale. They teased what was next. That's really frustrating to end on that note. And so you want to find the right landing spot. There's not a lot of shows that can run for 10 seasons because that's a lot of episodes. I think you can go longer when you're doing the 10, 13 episode seasons because then you have more time to map it out, think it out in the way you do it. I wouldn't lock in wanting 7 more seasons. I would definitely want more seasons. David, I just watched Matrix and Matrix 2 for the first time. What were your thoughts? My lungs kept losing air from laughing at how enjoyably absurd the second got as I got further into the movie. I think the first one is great. One of the best sci-fi movies, one of the best action movies, one of the best martial arts movies ever made. And that's what's so brilliant about it, is that it merges all of their influences so well. The wire work of Hong Kong cinema, the action of John Woo, a bunch of the mythology of both anime and the Terminator kind of merged together. And then a bunch of both Western and Eastern philosophy kind of all combined together in something that was very mainstream. The second movie tried to up all of that. It tried to deconstruct their own mythology, and it got a little bit pretentious. So there's definitely, they went too far with some of the CGI people where they just look like bad cutscenes from PlayStation 2, or they look like PlayStation 2 cutscenes, really good cutscenes from PlayStation 2, really bad CGI people based on modern standards. So there's some of that, but as soon as the architect shows up, and it just gets so overdone. And then I think the third one really hurts all of it. I have a ranking of the Matrix movies where I elaborate a little bit better. I did it about a year ago, so is rewatched all of them with a fresh mind, trying to be friendly to them, but there's some problems. Quinn, do you have a favorite composer? John Williams, without doubt, that is number one. John Williams, I think, has just so many iconic, classic, perfect scores. Number 2 for me is James Horner. James Horner repeats himself a good bit. You hear a James Horner score and you know you're listening to James Horner, but he's done some just phenomenal work. And then third, maybe Jerry Goldsmith, James Newton Howard, Hans Zimmer. Those are, it's an obvious list, but they're the obvious ones for good reason. David Madison, the only Tarantino movie I've yet to watch is Death Proof. If you're saving one for last, well, you're setting yourself for disappointment with that one. I said it before, I probably said this to you, but parts of that were filmed right around where I grew up. So I believe it's when Rosario Dawson is like sitting on a car at a gas station. I've been there 1,000 times right there on that street. It's weird to me. It's weird to see it in a movie because it's 2 blocks from where the best man from my wedding was. It's a block from the church I grew up at. So it's weird to like see it right there in a movie. Majestic Demon, another film I saw this week that I'd never seen before that I absolutely loved is Bumblebee. Yeah, that's a good one. A very nice fixing of the Transformers movies, figuring out how to do those movies right. Bryce Bailey, have you ever considered making a video on unmade movie scripts, talking about the ideas within them and how they would have played out if they were made? And there are plenty out there on the internet for free. So I wouldn't want anything that required me to read scripts. I probably wouldn't do that. I did a video on canceled Spider-Man movies last July. I really enjoyed doing that, and I plan to do a lot more of that. That's what you're going to see a lot more of. Not a lot more. You'll see more of that on my channel. Specifically going into scripts, I don't think that's too much that you'd see. Rich Reviews, you should try and do a tongue-in-cheek ranking of video of Razzie Worst Picture winners. I think I mentioned this to you before. I just don't like the Razzies. I just don't. I don't enjoy what they are. It feels like an obvious joke. It feels like punching down. And so I've just never been a Razzies fan. Never. I know other people like them or have fun with it. It just feels like, last year they'd be like, Cats sucked. Aren't I clever? Well, no. I mean, everyone's been making that joke. You're late to the party making that joke. So it seems like almost like the best of the most obvious movie jokes. And then there's stuff like, worst performances. I just, and it's just only things that are scratching the surface. It's just meaningless. So I've just never been a fan of the Razzies. So I wouldn't want to, I just don't have any interest in doing anything on the Razzies because I do not enjoy them at all. David Patterson, my favorite TV show of all time is Avatar: The Last Airbender. My least favorite movie of all time is Shyamalan's The Last Airbender. That's what I hear from people. If you like the TV show, you will hate the movie on a very deep level. Sidar, just finished watching What's Eating Gilbert Grape. Have you seen it? I have, but not recently. I mean, it was probably 15 years ago that I watched it, maybe even more than that. So I remember only having positive things to say about it. At whatever point in time I watched it, it was before Leonardo DiCaprio was respected by the mainstream. There was because of Titanic and then a couple of the other movies he did following Titanic, there's a big backlash against him because the movie was so popular. And there's just a lot of hate thrown his way for a number of years. And it took a while for everyone to be like, oh, wait, no, he's a really good actor. So we need to grow up a little bit. And so at whatever point in time I watched it, it was right at that window where people are just crapping on Leonardo DiCaprio. It's like, this is him as a teenager giving an insanely good performance. This guy can act. Just because he was in a popular movie that turned the Titanic story into a romance doesn't mean he's a bad actor. And but it's been a long time. Gamerman, if Kevin Feige was to restore the Marvel Netflix verse, I would want him to bring back the Punisher for 3 more seasons. You seem very specific on the number of seasons you want. I don't know if that means that you have a number of plot lines worked out, but it seems that way. Bryce Bailey, would you consider doing a How to Fix Fantastic Four? Would have to be a long video. Lol. I actually don't. I did a video where I broke it down very early on 3 years ago on my channel. Broke it down where I think I talked about some of that stuff. I actually kind of disagree. It wouldn't need to be. It's an easy punching bag because the movie falls apart at a certain point in time, but it's just because the first half of the movie works. It's the second half where it kind of loses it. So you just have to come up with what the middle act of the movie is and give it time to finish the CGI. But I don't think it's as unfixable of a movie as people want to say. That it's just an easy punching bag because it just goes off the rails at a certain point in time. Andrew, how would you fix or reboot the DCEU? So I don't think it needs to be fixed at this point. They've figured out their groove. The movies that they've been putting out for a couple years now have been solid. They're not having all the issues that they had before. And so at this point in time, I don't think it needs to be fixed. So the question is, how would I reboot it? It's so the question becomes, how would I reboot the DC characters in continuity, not the DCEU? The DCEU is the specific continuity, and if I were to pitch the whole thing, I would pitch something totally different from what they did. As much as I've enjoyed certain things, my world would be. They didn't set out to make a shared universe. They were working on. David Goyer was working on The Dark Knight Rises, and took a break for a week and just tried to do something different. He came up with ideas for Superman, pitched it to Christopher Nolan. He was like, "Oh, that's cool." And then they pitched it to the studio and they went, "Wait, the guy that did The Dark Knight has an idea for a Superman movie. Let's take this idea." And so they took their idea and they got Zack Snyder on board, and that was Man of Steel. It was never supposed to be a shared universe like the MCU. So then they did one movie that has little Easter eggs for LexCorp and Wayne Industries, but doesn't set up a shared universe. So I think at the core of it, if you want to do a DC shared universe, you pick something better as a starting point than Man of Steel that's designed to be a shared universe. And I mean, to pitch a whole universe, I couldn't do that off the top of my head, but you start with Batman, and in it, he discovers that there's going to be more. He discovers Wonder Woman, or it already kind of exists. I couldn't do it off the top of my head. Richard Hughes, I have to balance between doing my job, watching YouTubers, watching and reviewing movies and TV shows for my channel, and watching several different podcasts and finishing Collider videos. Obviously, balancing all of that for me, decisions have to be made. Thankfully, unlike the 22 million people that are filing for unemployment, I personally am thankful that the UVA hasn't started furloughing people. That's good. I'm glad that you still have a job. It's a scary time out there right now. Damien, hey Sean, hello, Damien. David, my top 5 films of 2019: The Avengers Endgame, The Lighthouse, Parasite, Marriage Story, 1917. Great set of movies. Cider, have you ever seen Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind? One of my favorite movies. Keep up the great work. Thank you. Yeah, I've seen it. I don't remember which of this kind of with Charlie, it was Charlie Kaufman and Spike Jonze, which combination of people are involved with that one. But I was all into the stuff that they were doing back in the mid and early zeros that were just these off the wall, slightly weird kind of ideas for concept. Very sorry I keep touching my nose. It is just driving me crazy right now. But thoroughly enjoyed what they were doing. Bryce, which movie would you most want to see a TV show made out of the concept? Which TV show would you most want to see? Which movie would you most want to see a TV show made of the concept? Batman. I think Batman lends himself to TV more than movies because he's street level and a detective, and it lends itself to television more so than spectacle movies. Gamer Gamix, if Kevin Feige would restore Marvel Netflix verse, I would want him to bring back Luke Cage and Iron Fist for one more season. David Patterson, there are 4 Pixar movies I wouldn't recommend: Cars 2, Brave, The Good Dinosaur, and Finding Dory. And then he also says, have you seen Denis Villeneuve's Prisoners? I've not. I actually haven't seen that one. I'll watch it before Dune comes out so I can rank his films, so it will happen pretty soon, but not super soon. So, our favorite Denzel Washington movie. Remember the Titans. I don't know. I'm kind of blanking on his movies at the moment. Remember the Titans is the one that comes to mind, but he's obviously has an incredible resume of films, but that's the one that's popping in my mind at this moment. Christian Arnold, favorite actor to have a major role in The Office? John Krasinski and Steve Carell. Majestic Demon, top 5 Disney movies of all time: Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, Mulan, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and The Lion King. So a whole lot of Disney Renaissance in there, which would be my answer as well. Gamerman, if Kevin Feige was to restore the Marvel Netflix verse, I would want Luke Cage and Iron Fist Heroes for Hire miniseries and a Daughters of the Dragon miniseries. Yes, I think that's what we all were frustrated with, because it seemed like they were going to do that, and then they didn't. David Patterson, my brother said he doesn't want to watch Marriage Story because he thinks it's dumb. I later found out its only part he knew was the scene with the characters screaming at each other. I don't know. A lot of people just do stuff like that. I don't know how old your brother is, but wouldn't surprise me if people jumping to conclusions based off small amount of information is pretty common these days. So, people are into different things. My wife says stuff to me all the time like that. So does my daughter. We're like, I hate this. I don't want to watch this. Like, why? And then they tell me it's some very niche, specific thing. Gamerman, I don't have any ideas for Jessica Jones because after season 1 show, the show went to crap with season 2 and was absolute garbage. Season 3 was okay, but the show just didn't have any life left. I pretty well agree with you. Rich Reviews, apparently there is a model that shows that my state, Virginia, doesn't possibly peak till mid-August. I mean, that's kind of a good thing, though. If it doesn't peak for a long time, that means there's not a sudden surge of people. There's time to amp up for it. It's slowly getting there, but I don't even know what models like that are guessing that far out. I wouldn't trust too much. Caleb, Habrick, sup, Sean? Starting the Daniel Craig Bond movies now. Haven't seen any of the 007 movies. That's probably the best place to start. Then it's a restart of the continuity, and the other ones are they're all kind of products of their time. So starting with the new ones is probably the best way to go. And if you enjoy them, then check out the other ones. But that's like a continuity in and of itself. David Patterson, I am delaying watching Rise of Skywalker because I'm worried I won't like it. You probably won't like it. It seems like there's a lot of people not liking it. Richard Reviews, will you be watching the shows on Quibi? I'm not aware of any that are interesting to me. So I've been seeing so many ads for it and thinking, hey, I should check this out just to see what happens. There's not a show though, specifically, in which case I'm too busy to care too much about it. Honestly, that's my answer. It's like, I'm curious about this new thing that they're spending a lot of time promoting. I'm too busy to care though. There's not one that's hooking me. That's for all the ads and all the personalities. There's not a specific show that I'm like, I want to see that thing. Majestic Demon, have you seen Snow White and the Huntsman? No, I haven't seen either one of those movies. Oliver, a favorite A24 movie. I just watched Ex Machina for the first time yesterday and I loved it. I'm not a big A24 person. So was the Joel Edgerton one, The Gift, was that A24? I think A24 would be the one that I would say off the top of my head. David Patterson, apparently the runtime for Tenet will be 195 minutes. Is that from a reliable source? I don't know. I haven't seen or heard that. That seems like a stretch to me. Even though it's Nolan, the idea of a movie that long that's not based on tied to anything seems unlikely. So I'd have to have more information. Luke Brown, have you seen Outlander? I think that's the TV show where the girl goes back in time or something like that. Not really, but yes at the same time. My wife watched it, so I was in the room while she was watching it. So it was a weird experience because the show has a lot of sex scenes in it. So I'd fall asleep on the couch, wake up, and then there's just two people going at it on the screen. Like, what are you watching? What is going on in here? But I haven't really watched it. Anything that's kind of British time period stuff, I'm not really the target audience for that. Now my beard's getting in my mouth, and it's tickling my nose too. Sorry as you watch me try to not have an itchy nose. David Patterson, what is your favorite movie no one has seen? No one has seen is a tough criteria. I always go back to Warrior because that's an incredibly underwatched movie that that's the one that I always say is my answer to that question. But I'm going to try and rush through these questions. My nose is killing me, and now I'm starting to sneeze it up like crazy. But that's the one I always go to for that type of question. Landon Peterson, have your kids seen School of Rock? No, they haven't. I've only seen it once, and that was a while ago. Landon, will you watch the Disney or Apple Plus, not Disney Plus, Apple TV Defending Jacob on the 24th? It's not a priority for me. I haven't seen a trailer, so maybe if I see a trailer, it would become a priority. But at the moment, it is not a priority for me. Sidar, saw your post where you look like Kurt Cobain. Big Nirvana fan? Yeah, all of the 90s rock, alternative grunge. I'm into all of that stuff. But I don't know if you saw the post that went along with that on Instagram and my stories. I literally had a poster of Kurt Cobain. That I wonder if I can put this up on here. This could be cool with my new technology. It's possible. I don't see it. Sorry. I almost had a fun thing I could have done here. Oh, it's on my phone. Never mind. So I had a poster of Kurt Cobain that was literally what I was trying to do with my hair. But yeah, all that stuff. That's the music of my high school, teenage years that I was super into. Rich Reviews, another idea for ranking video. Ranking the Care Bears movies. Rich, what? You're trying to torture me now. You're trying to torture me. Care Bears movies. No! Richard is also ranked the Degrassi series. I've never seen any of Degrassi, so I barely know what it is. I don't know. Is that something? Are you a big Care Bears fan or a Degrassi fan? Just trying to understand. When you make some of these suggestions, are there videos you want to watch, or are you just guessing what other people want to watch, or are you trying to torture me? Ryan Green, do you think they could ever do Deadpool in the MCU? So there's a way to, because Deadpool breaks the fourth wall, There's always a way to do it. I am so sorry about my nose. It's getting gross at this point in time. There's a way to do it because you can break the fourth wall and you can do I mean, he was always tangential to the X-Men movies. So you just do the same thing where you have him making jokes about these characters. You have him showing up at Avengers Tower and there's nobody there or someone very minor's there. But I mean, you don't, if you want to continue with Ryan Reynolds, you're in the MCU, you're not going to have an R-rated Deadpool. And the appeal of Deadpool was that they made an R-rated comic book character. So I don't know what they're going to do, but I sure hope they basically just continue what they're doing and just make a bunch of meta fourth wall breaking jokes. Rich reviews. Have you seen the trailers for Saved by the Bell reboot? No, I'm not really interested in that. Quinn, do you like Adam Sandler and have any favorites of his? Yeah, I mean, so Adam Sandler was him and Jim Carrey, some of the top comedic actors of my high school years. So all that stuff they did from like 95 to 2005, I love all that stuff. Wedding Singer would be my favorite of the bunch, but all Happy Gilmore, Big Daddy, that's just all really funny stuff that from my formative years. The stuff that he did for Netflix over the last 10 years, I don't think it's watchable. And it's frustrating that he never matured as a actor. He started to, and he was good at it, and then he stopped, and he was like just leaned into cheap comedy. That it's weird for him to do some of that stuff at age 50. It just doesn't work anymore. And so I was very happy to see him do Uncut Gems and get serious again. Jace, what standalone movie should get a TV sequel? I just don't have questions. I don't have things like that normally just sitting in my head, especially when you get specific. What standalone movies? That's not a thing I'm normally just thinking about. So I unfortunately don't have a real answer for you on that sort of thing. Nothing's really coming to mind as to what I would say for that. Matthew K, are you into roller coasters, going to theme parks? I enjoy all of that stuff. I enjoy, roller coasters and everything. I'm scared of edges, and so some of it freaks me out, but I also enjoy the thrill of the whole thing. I just haven't done it much. But there's a water park that's actually about 10 minutes from my house, and we got season passes right at the end of the last season. So, my kids really enjoyed that. Now that I've had my son just turned 8 yesterday. So he was too young to do that with us. And so when you're at a certain phase of life where you have kids, it's no fun to take your 3-year-old to a water park or anything like that because they just start there to go in the wading pool and then you can't do anything. But he's now old enough that he could do stuff with me. So I'll probably start doing a lot more of those things. Rich reviews. Canker sores inside of your mouth are always annoying. They are the worst. Landon Peterson, favorite Netflix original? If you're talking about movies, maybe Always Be My Maybe, Triple Frontier, Marriage Story. Marriage Story, it was great. Those are the ones that immediately come to mind. Landon Peterson, least favorite band. I don't keep things like that. For least favorite band, it would have to be someone that's like offensive. Nickelback's my least favorite band. Like, okay, I mean, if you don't like them, cool, but they have to a band has to say something stupid. I guess Nickelback's done some of that, but I just don't existing in a world where because I don't like your music means I don't like you or you're my least favorite. Like that's just I just don't do things like that. There's an enormous number of singers, artists, and everything. They're just not for me, and that's totally fine. And I don't need to make lists of least favorites and things like that. David Patterson, Villeneuve's movie Enemy has two of the best working actors, Jake Gyllenhaal and Jake Gyllenhaal. True. Quinn, do you like stand-up comedy? Any favorite comedians? Jim Gaffigan, I think, has managed to keep being funny while going back to the same exact bag of tricks. Dimitri Martin had some stuff I loved. Seinfeld was just a classic. I don't listen to a ton. It's frustrating to me so many stand-up comedians just lean so heavily into crass humor that it spoils a lot of it for me because it's just not clever. It's just them being crass. And that's a problem to me. Gamerman, Ahmad Best said in an interview, the reason the sequel trilogy failed is because George Lucas made Star Wars for kids and the sequel trilogy was more for adults. I mean, I think there's that guy. He's got a little bit of a bias in saying that George Lucas made Star Wars for kids when he's the most juvenile thing in Star Wars as Jar Jar Binks. But I don't think that's devoid of truth. I don't think it's the full truth. There's a lot of really big problems with the sequels, and I think there's bigger ones than that. Matt G, I hope Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. original characters to get a place in the MCU or MCU TV. I wouldn't count on that. I wouldn't guess that that's where things would head. Unfortunately, maybe some of the characters might show up a little bit in the TV shows. They're not going to show up in the movies. David Patterson, there's essentially a shrine for Nolan in my room. Fun. He's a good one. If you're going to have a shrine for a director, he's not a bad one to pick. Thoughts on Blade Runner? I saw it for the first time in theaters, not just in a theater, but ever. I want blown away by it, but still liked it. Then I saw the sequel months later in a theater. Yeah, I like the second one a lot more. I've said it many times before. I'm just not wired for kind of like artistic, metaphoric, allegorical things. And the original is very much like that. The second one I think was better with the themes and what it was trying to do. Matt G, I never really liked Avatar. I thought it was way overrated. Yeah, I mean, the technology and everything is amazing. The action is very well done. The story is, I think, just too familiar. And the characters aren't all that interesting. Don't pop all that much. Sidar, a fan of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, funniest show for me. You know, I've watched plenty of it over the years because, you know, I was a 90s kid. So then I was watching it during the original run. And, you know, everybody knew the word to the theme song and everything like that. It's never been one of my favorites, but I have nothing but positive things to say about it. Gamerman, the Star Wars original trilogy is about Luke Skywalker's destiny. The prequel trilogy is about Anakin's tragedy. The sequel trilogy is about Rey's lineage, I guess you would have to say. It's about her discovering her lineage, which is not very interesting. But I think that what you would instead have to say is that it's about Kylo Ren's destiny. I mean, it's you know, Kylo Ren is the one that's kind of that in that story. But yeah, I mean, that's the problem with the sequels is that they don't really know what they're about and didn't stick to any one path. Each movie undid what the previous one had just done. Matt G, I'm worried independent theaters may not survive coming back. Heck, if AMC is in trouble. I mean, I think there's good reason to be worried about some of that. I think the one kind of positive that you can say on some of this is that sorry, I had a video go live at 3:00 my time, 13 minutes ago, and I just wanted to make sure that I always check whenever I post a video to make sure I didn't make any mistakes, and then in the first little bit, people will let me know how badly I screwed things up. Sorry about that. I just have to check sometimes on that stuff to make sure I didn't make any mistakes. Movie theaters, there's always going to be demand for people going to the movies. So there's an artificial problem being created because we were being in lockdown. Theaters aren't failing because people don't want to go. And even independent theaters aren't failing because people don't want independent theaters. They're failing because we can't go to the movies. And that's temporary. That will change. It will be fixed. So the question is someone else, a big corporation, going to swoop in and buy them? Is Disney going to buy AMC theaters? Is Apple going to buy AMC theaters? Or is Cinemark or Regal or AMC going to buy the independent theaters? I think that's where the question gets interesting. But the demand for movies in theaters hasn't gone away. So I don't think we have to fear too much for some of that stuff, because even if the specific owners now don't make it, there's still demand. There's still a way to make money with the theater. But we could lose independent theaters, which have a distinct flavor to them. I think there is a side of that that's legitimate. David Patterson, I don't understand why so many people thought Ad Astra was great. It didn't really have an interesting story. I thought it was somewhat copying Interstellar at some points. I gave it a 66%. Yeah, I mean, anyone that just thought it was like top tier, best of the year, I think that's a little overstated. But it is sci-fi that has some solid things in it. So, I mean, I think if you go in expecting it to be top tier, it's not that. But like you said, you gave it a 66%, which is not a terrible score. That's not an awful movie. It's just not a great movie either. Gee, I wonder. I worry Wonder Woman will mess up continuity. Why can't we just stop making prequels? Black Widow deserved Black Widow deserved a movie, so we got to deal with this, but it's got to stop. Uh, possibly. I mean, it could. I mean, it's interesting to go to different time periods. It's interesting to see a superhero in the 80s. That's an interesting thing in and of itself. The continuity is broken independent of that. It's already there's problems in certain lines that were said versus what they're trying to do. So I would just prepare for it to be broken. David Pattison, Civil War equals best MCU movie. It's a really good one. I really like it. Rich Reviews, how would you pitch a live action Peanuts movie? Um, I don't. I think it lends itself to animation because there's like a dog flying a jet around. I don't know that there's a like kind of like with the Simpsons. I don't think it works to try and put that in reality. And as soon as you do that, it immediately loses some of the charm. So I'm not sure that I would. I don't think I would do that. So I wouldn't have a pitch for that. Rich Reviews, or better yet, rank the theatrical released Peanuts films. I don't think I could do that off the top. I haven't watched them recent enough to be able to do that. The one that they did recently was very cool. They did a great job with the recent one. Matt G, only way I think you can do a prequel is if the original series is going to continue at the same time. Can you address stuff in can address stuff in the prequels? For example, if Han Solo was alive in Episode 9 and could address the events in Solo that he never mentions in 4 through 6 or 7 and 8. Well, I mean, I guess I would kind of disagree with that because I don't want a prequel to just be him being like, and then I went on this mission, and then I went on this mission, and then I had this girl that I was dating. That's kind of unnatural if you do too much of that. I understand if you have a bunch of these gigantic formative events that like explain everything and none of it's ever mentioned, I think that can be a problem. But at the same time, the idea of like, if you did a bunch of him just doing heists as this spice runner, there's no reason you would need him to mention all of those because they're kind like we don't hear every conversation he ever had. There's no reason if we know that he was a spice runner, then we know that all this stuff happened. That's a bunch of history that's covered with a single line of dialogue. Gamerman, the reason CW did Crisis on Infinite Earths is because Warner Brothers wanted to connect the Arrowverse, DCEU, and all the live-action properties in the same multiverse and soft reboot both of them, but CW hired a bad writer. I mean, I don't know if you're speculating or if that's like an actual thing that's stated. I mean, they kind of did that, but they kind of didn't. I mean, they brought over Ezra Miller Flash for this little bit, but they also didn't. It's not like they erased the DCEU. It's not as if they told us they erased all these continuities, but obviously they didn't do that, and they're not saying that continuity is the same as the one that we're in. So I just don't know that there's a way to balance out that's what they were actually doing. And it's not even their writer necessarily. I mean, the writing wasn't good, but their strategy was the whole thing that they were doing. This is producers. This isn't just the writer sitting there trying to do this. They were calling people up like, hey, will you do our crossover event? We need you for 2 days at this date. And like Michael Rosenbaum has said this, like, yeah, I mean, like I was visiting my mom and they just called me up and they said, hey, we're writing the script. Will you do it? We need a yes or no answer today. And that's what they did. And if he said yes, then we would have had him. They would have just written it in there. That's just not a good way to write something. Gamerman, would you consider making a how to fix Crisis on Infinite Earths? I'm going to post my early prediction drafts on Twitter sometime this week. If WB was allowing them to use movie footage, I would have used more than just Green Lantern. No, I don't think so. I think the problem is that it's not a story I resonate with. I think inherently was always gonna. I don't think there's a way to do it that's satisfying. It's a iconic comic book storyline because they needed to resolve all these different comic books and continuities. But I don't think it lends itself to just doing it generically. And the concept of deleting all of these movie things from the past continuities doesn't exactly put a smile on my face. So I don't have a I could fix specific small things. I couldn't fix the whole thing. David Patterson, my dad never let my mom show my brother and I Bambi since he was a hunter. So I've never seen Bambi. I mean, it's a classic, but it's not a classic that I would necessarily recommend watching. Not one that I'm showing my kids. Gamer Man, I know you did not like Arrow ending, but the original ending would have been Oliver Queen's death inspired Bruce Wayne to become Batman, which is way worse. See you next week, Sean. See you next week. I mean, I guess I don't. They've been hinting at Batman being on the show and talking about him, alluding to him in these shows for years. So I'm not quite sure what you're referring to, because that's not, if the options on the table are just what they gave us or his death inspires Bruce Wayne to become Batman, I don't know how that makes any sense in light of everything that they've already told us with Batwoman and all these other things. So, and it's not either or. You just don't kill off the character in the crisis. You don't give him that ending. So there's a lot of other options that they could have done besides what they did. David Patterson, my brother wants to watch the Tarantino movies with the least feet and the least realistic violence. I'm not quite sure what you're asking me. Rich Reviews. A while back, there was a Reddit user took it upon himself to want to create a new version of Box Office Mojo due to the backlash it caused. Now, due to the coronavirus, it looks like it might be a reality. Well, I mean, after it got purchased by IMDb, Box Office Mojo it became awful. So hopefully someone can make something good out of it. Mikrupt Dansky. I'm sure I mispronounced that. Sorry. Have you watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine? I think it's the same level as The Office. I haven't, actually. My wife watched some of it while I wasn't around, and she didn't connect with it. So I've never given it a try. No, I literally haven't seen a single episode. I haven't seen a scene from it. I've never been a big Andy Samberg fan, so that's part of it. That's one of the reasons I didn't rush towards it. But for the most part, I just been too busy, so it just hasn't happened. Christian, for a top 10 Tuesday, you should do your wife's top 10 favorite movies. That could be fun. If I did it, I'd want her to join in. I'll propose it to her as soon as we finish in a few minutes. I'll propose it to her, see if we can make it happen. I don't think she'd be on camera, though. So, but I think people could get a kick out of that. So I'd have to talk to her, get her favorite movies, but see what I could convince her to actually do. Ryan Green, which show did you enjoy more, Star Wars Rebels or Clone Wars? Rebels is a little bit more focused. Comics, man, thoughts on Prisoners? I haven't seen it. I actually haven't seen that one yet. I'll watch it later this year whenever I rank Mr. Villeneuve's movies, but I haven't seen it yet. Have you watched Code 8? Yes, I have watched Code 8. I watched it back in January. This is apparently the movie everyone's asking me about. I think I already talked about it in this live stream. And then I talked about it in the other live stream I did right before this, but yes, I watched it in January. I enjoyed it. My wife, it's anything that's sci-fi, action, heist things, I'll probably enjoy, and I like the Amell cousins, so they're the two leads in it. So it was one that I enjoyed. Jace, what is your favorite Disneyland ride? I haven't been to Disneyland in 30 years. The last time I went to Disneyland, I think in the second grade. So it was literally 30 years ago. It was probably 1990. I went to Disney World a few years after that. So that was only 27 or 28 years ago. So I don't even know what rides are still there. Any answer I would give would not be legitimate. Cider, do you have a celebrity crush? Oh, sure. Drew Barrymore, Jennifer Garner, Rachel McAdams. I don't know. There's some that come to mind. David Patterson, should I watch The Irishman after this? I've been delaying it for it's too long because of the runtime. It's long, but you've watched a bunch of Tarantino movies that are crazy long too. So I thought the first hour and a half was slow, and then it kind of gets its traction once you kind of know where it's going. David Patterson, Star Wars should be made for everyone. It's just that type of franchise. Yeah, so it should be made for everyone, but that's the question of, is it just for it's family, so you should have child elements, but you should also be aware that adults are watching it. I think it's family entertainment. It's not made for children. I think stating it's made for children is an overstatement. Matthew K, have you played Overwatch? No, I haven't played any of it at all. Quinn, have you seen Hacksaw Ridge? Yeah, I actually have a review of it on my channel. Someone gave it to me in the mail. I just actually filmed the fan opening just a couple days ago. And I haven't posted it yet, but I filmed it. Yeah, I have a review on my channel. Early review. Saw it at the Dollar Theater right before it left, but it has my thoughts on it. But I haven't watched it since then, but I did receive it actually in the mail literally like 3 days ago. David Patterson, Kylo Ren is greater than any other character introduced in the sequel trilogy. I'm not sure where I don't know who I would say. It's tough because there's so many frustrations with things that they did. Sidar, I have always liked movies, but when I found your channel last year, the entire film community on YouTube, I feel I fell in love with movies even more. You are one of the reasons I really love movies now. I just love to hear that. I have a passion for movies. Obviously, this is what I've always been into, and then I've found, much like you, I found community on the internet with other people that were into them, and that's kind of why I try to be the positive guy. I don't do a lot of like roast movies. I don't get excited about putting movies at the bottom of my rankings and stuff like that because I want to share a passion for movies. And I think positivity is more infectious and more fun, and a community I want to be a part of, and the discussions that are had there, I think they're healthier than people that like want to roast everything. That's just not my thing. Quinn, are you a fan of any Kevin Smith films? I haven't really watched any of his in a while. Back in the day, I really liked Mallrats and Chasing Amy. Those are the two that really connected with me. Mallrats, at the point in time I discovered it, I was super into it for like 3 months. Just thought it was so witty because it was people talking like people about stuff that we were interested in. And then I really enjoyed the conflict. I thought there was a little bit more of a truth to Chasing Amy than a lot of other comedies at that point in time. David Patterson, let's keep this live action remake trend away from Illumination so we don't need to bleach our eyes after seeing Minions rendered in live action. Very, very, very true. David Patterson, the movies I'm watching during quarantine have ranged from dark and metaphorical as The Lighthouse to the Cars trilogy. Like, you are all over the place. I'm not sure if I agree with Bong Ho winning Best Director, but that's purely because I thought Sam Mendes did something really special in 1917. Exactly. I mean, that was a really special movie, 1917, an incredible achievement. Christian Arnold, have you seen Last of the Mohicans? I have, but I mean, it was 15 years ago. It was not recently at all to be able to give you an opinion or thoughts that would be interesting. Comics Man, I just finished season 1 of Daredevil. It was great. I also started watching Jessica Jones. I really liked it so far, but I've heard negative things about Iron Fist. Should I check it out? No. I wouldn't check out Iron Fist. So all 3 seasons of Daredevil are really good. Season 1 of Jessica Jones is good. I didn't like season 2 very much, and I didn't like season 3 was better, but not a big improvement. Luke Cage, the first half of season 1 I thought was really good, and then something happens. Well, I'd say generically, a character dies pretty suddenly, and then everything kind of goes off the rails for the rest of that show. Punisher, both seasons were good. Defenders was disappointing. So there's my quick thoughts on those. Jace, what is the best Blu-ray you own? I don't really. I don't know. Wouldn't have a way to answer that. I don't tend to think about Blu-rays as best, better, and worse than other ones. I don't really have an answer for that one. David Madison, watch 12 Angry Men. I keep telling you to do it until you do it. I just don't understand why people want me to watch 12 Angry Men. It just seems like a random one to want me specifically to watch in light of what I cover, what I do. I think that's the one that's always kind of confusing to me. I don't always know why people want me to watch specific things. And so then without knowing why, I'm slow to do those things. All right, we are at an hour and a half, and I was talking for an hour before that, so my nose is killing me. and I need to go eat lunch. I worked out right before I did this, so probably not the. That's the reason my nose is itching, is because I'm amped up on all my stimulants and stuff. Thank you guys so much for your support and everything. Oh, one question coming up right here at the sidebar. Have you seen Moonlight? Special movie for me. No, I actually haven't seen it. It's not one that I caught that year, so not yet. Thank you guys so much, and we'll be back next week with more.